Hi, I'm Dr. Rachel Haviland, and I'm here with Sarah Bingham, clinical nutrition consultant, to talk about nutrition and behavior today. Welcome, Sarah.
It is good to be here. Thank you, Dr. Haviland. I've got lots to tell folks. I just get really excited about this topic.
So let's start off with talking about a little bit about your experience and how you came to realize the impact of nutrition on children's behavior.
Oh, well, good point. Of course, as a kid, my mother would say I was a complete rebel, and I would say that I ate way too much sugar. So that really contributed, I'm sure, to some of my behavior. But in general, what happened was in my early 20s, I got sick and went to a holistic doc, and he said, Sarah, get off all white flour and all white sugar. And I was determined to feel better. I just did not like the way I felt. So I did do that. And I immediately began seeing all kinds of ridiculous changes in my body, in how I felt, my behavior. I was the kid that, whose knee was always going, a mile a minute in class and stuff like that. I'm a high energy person. So you add sugar to that and it's pretty deadly. So at any rate, I was watching that, but I was also working my undergraduate degree, and working with my undergrad degree was in early childhood development with an emphasis on special needs kids. So I was working with these special needs preschoolers, and I saw these kids and I said, you know what, wait, they might have some cognitive challenges. They don't feel good. They've got snotty noses, their bowels are off, they've got skin stuff. And then I started looking at what they were eating, and I said, well, no wonder they don't feel well. And so that just drove me nuts. And I said, that's it. I've got to go back and get more education. So I went back and got my master's degree in nutrition. And throughout my career as a nutritionist, children have always been my passion. What families are going through, and certainly behavior is right up there these days, and more. There's just a ton of behavioral issues now, which are really neurological issues.
Mm-hmm. Now, you describe children as, you compare them to a garden. So tell us a little bit more about that, about, how we need to nourish our soil.
Well, I'm not even a gardener, which always surprises people, but I'm not. But I know that if you're going to do a good garden, you've got to create really good soil. You've got to have rich soil, and farmers will spend a whole lot of time getting that soil rich, putting all kinds of things on it. And because what they know is if you have a good, rich soil, you grow very strong disease-resistant plants and pest-resistant plants. So farmers have known this forever. Well, the soil in a human being is really our intestinal tract. It's our gut. And all of the stuff that's in there is what creates a very hale and hearty immune system. We've just learned, Hippocrates, the father of medicine, said all disease begins in the gut. And we have just plain forgotten that. And we've just decided we can throw anything on that soil. And we are. And our children are paying for it.
Right. You were sharing with me some stats that are just incredibly scary about, how our kids are doing these days. Would you like to share that now?
Well, yep. We've got obesity. Let's go 1970 to now, okay? Just the last 50 years. In 1970, it was about a 5% obesity rate in our children. It's now 20%. Back then in 1970, asthma, 9%. It's doubled. It's now 18%. ADHD, it's up 30%. Leukemia, up 35%. These overall increases, we're seeing it. Anxiety. I talk to teachers now, and they say a third of their class, if not more, have significant anxiety. We never saw that 50 years ago, 60 years ago. Never saw that. Behavior issues, diabetes, gut, bowel disease, overall inflammation. I see a ton of teenagers their gut is just, they got all kinds of gastrointestinal issues, and it's because of what we're doing to our soil.
Yeah. So what's the difference now between now and 1970? What are we doing today that is damaging our guts, basically?
Well, we can start with 1970. About 5,000 chemicals were being thrown into our environment and our food. It's now over 150,000. And very few of these have really been studied, cleared, et cetera. You are a researcher in cancer. You know that many of these chemicals are absolutely carcinogenic. So if they're carcinogenic, they're affecting our bodies. How we feed our animals and is a huge issue. These animals are not healthy. We're feeding them, we're thinking them as entities, not as true beings, and we're not feeding them the way our ancestors, the way they were fed in ancestral times, which was basically out in free pasture. So,
right. Yeah. One thing I've noticed recently is that I've been picking up the green-wise meats, and without the chemicals, without the antibiotics, and grass-fed, just the flavor and the texture of the meat is so different. And I know it can be a little more expensive, but I've really noticed the difference, and I was shocked.
I know, exactly. And I hear that over and over from clients. Once they've switched over to good free range organic meat, they're like, man, I go out and I taste that meat and it doesn't taste good. Or I go to a friend's and they serve up what I used to eat all the time. And it's like, wow, it's really different. And the other thing that's profoundly different, Dr. Haviland, is the use of Roundup. Roundup is one of the most heavily used pesticides, but it's actually not a pesticide. It has never been registered as a pesticide. It's actually an antibiotic. And what it does is gets into the soil and kills the bacteria that create a healthy soil, that create a healthy plant. So it kills the plant, which makes it easier to harvest. They throw a bunch of it on our wheat a couple of weeks before they harvest it. And so and it kills the plant, which makes the plant go to seed, which means they can collect the little wheat berries a whole lot easier. But what does that mean that you're eating?
Yes, we're then eating that. So then what does it do to us?
Exactly. You're eating Roundup plus wheat. Okay. And we know that Roundup kills bacteria. We know that you have 4 to 5 pounds of bacteria in your gut. That is what makes your 90% of your immune system is created in your gut, 80 to 90% of your neurotransmitters, which create happy, calm, all these neurotransmitters go to your brain, and that's what creates an undepressed, happy person. So we've got havoc going on in our guts, and this is a huge issue. And the other issue is electromagnetic radiation. Again, who isn't around Wi-Fi all day long? Do you all turn your Wi-Fi off at night? If you don't, then your cells are being taxed 24/7. And we know that calcium is supposed to stay on the outside of the cell for a healthy cell. And we know that calcium begins to move inside the cell when it's vibrating so fast and being affected by Wi-Fi. And our children are 3 times more affected by that. So we got that.
They're very susceptible. Yeah. So what are some of the solutions to all of these problems?
What I'm hoping to do, and that is educate. Education is just key. Parents have got to, I hope, start getting mad and say, you know what, I don't want that kind of food anymore. I don't want it in my home. And they've got to assess and figure out what the primary culprits are for their family. Some families, the issue is more processed food. Some families, they've just recognized that they're living on the edge of a golf course or an agricultural field where they're using a ton of pesticides. I've had clients like that. Some clients, they're using electromagnetic radiation. They didn't even know that how much they're being exposed. So it really is, so much of it is educating yourself. Without question, the first stop always is whole foods, is unprocessed, good, simple food, the way your great-great-great-grandparents ate. And if you can really understand that the ancestral knowledge is key. Our ancestors always had fermented products. And what are fermented products full of? Do you know?
Probiotics.
Exactly. Probiotics, which are bacteria. They're loaded with the good guy bacteria. So our ancestors were always feeding those 4 to 5 pounds of bacteria that create our good health and good mood. And so they were constantly doing fermented foods because they didn't have refrigeration, so they had to do fermented foods. Our ancestors also always kept Uh, they would use every part of the animal. So they were, mama always had a bone broth hanging out on the back burner, because she also knew it was very healing. And they did use that to heal their children. There were no antibiotics back then. It was broth. And that's incredibly healing. So unfortunately, the education is key. And we have been educated in a very different way in this country, in a very reductionistic way. I mean, you're a scientist. You went through that training, right?
Yes, I did for, for years. Yeah.
For years and years.
Tell
Exactly.
us a little bit more about what you mean about reductionism.
Well, okay, so when I was being trained in nutrition, they'd say, well, this is vitamin A and this is vitamin C and this is, on and on. And if I were to ask you quickly, well, okay, if I had an orange and I had an apple, which one has more vitamin C? What's your quick answer?
Most people would say orange.
Yeah, most people would say orange. And that's because marketing, whatever, orange juice, all that good stuff. However, when you really examine all of the vitamin C-like qualities of an apple as compared to an orange, an apple actually has 3 times more vitamin C activity and antioxidant activity than an orange, which is really interesting. And that just exemplifies the fact that we've been taught to reduce everything to its little tiny pieces, except we're missing a whole bunch of stuff. We don't really know all of the components of a food.
No,
we don't.
No. All the effects it has on us, or how they kind of integrate with each other and interact with each other.
So yeah, there's vitamin A, but do you take it in isolation? Nature never puts vitamin A in isolation. It never puts vitamin C in isolation, any of these nutrients.
So yeah, maybe there's more to the saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away.
Exactly.
Because we don't understand everything that's inside the apple and how it interacts with each other and how it affects our immune system.
Exactly. And of course, now that we're in this stage of our existence, my byline is it takes more than an apple a day, which it does, because you've got to know more. So we must go to the whole family, meaning you need to look at the whole picture. The family's got to really pay attention to, okay, so who's shopping and who's running the kitchen? Oh my goodness, so many families, the kids run the kitchen. The kids say, Mom, I want this, Mom, I want that. And Mom's exhausted and she just says, what the heck? And so she goes to the store and buys all this junk. Schools even are allowing children to decide what they want to eat for lunch. OMG. I have mothers calling me going, they actually keep track of what the kids are ordering. So what are they ordering for lunch? 2 ice cream bars, some chips, that's lunch.
Right, right. I totally agree. And even when they do try to bring in good nutrition, there was a school near here that I heard that the parents were complaining because they had taken fries off the menu. So that told me that the parents are the ones complaining. They're not setting the example. They're the ones who are quite happy for their kids to eat this junk food. And the school was trying their best to improve the food for the kids. And so parents, a lot of it does come down to you. Yeah.
Yep. And that's the education. If you don't know what you don't know, how are you supposed to know? And most of us dearly want to keep eating what we were raised on, period. So unless you get sick and you realize this stuff isn't working, you don't really know, except that our children really are the canary in the cave. They are showing us loud and clear that what we are assuming is okay is absolutely not okay. And who in your family is selling the idea of good health? Is anyone talking about that? And children.
Or are you just so splintered and torn in so many directions that you're just trying to get through the day? But stop and think, you only have a short time really, but, up until the age of 18 when they're going to be off on their own, and most teenagers pretty much eat what they want anyway. So yes, you only have this short window of time to actually educate them. Very short
window. And as far as strong influence in food, you got about a dozen years. And the minute they move into teenagerness, it's real hard to turn that.
But so it's time to fess up, right? You have an acronym called FESS Up. Tell us about that.
I do. I have a wonderful acronym. I say to people, look, we got to fess up. And when you fess up, what it means is you're telling the truth. You got to tell the truth. The truth is you cannot achieve health, nor can your children, unless these 4 items are in place, and I call them the four legs of your chair. So the first one is food. You've got to have the food for FESS, okay? So the food's got to be in order. You've got to have good whole food that's nourishing your body. The E in FESS is for exercise. You've got to move. Our children are sitting around holding their phones all day long. They got to be outside. They got to get air. They got to get sun. We've started to become box people. We just live in boxes all day long. Not good for us. Not good air. Not good anything.
I always celebrate when I drive home and drive into our neighborhood and I see the kids outside playing with the basketball, running around. And I'm like, thank goodness they're not on the Xbox.
It's so true, and so many kids are not. You know, they're stuck at home. The first S in FESS is sleep. You have got to get sleep, and so do your children. So many parents just let their kid figure out when they're going to bed. You got, you know, junior high and high school kids surviving on 6 hours of sleep a night. If you think they can do anything with excellence, you're nuts. They need 9-10 hours of sleep every night. And there's only one person, there's only two people, if you've got two parents in the house, or one person if you're the parent in the house, that's going to dictate that. And that's the parent. The parent has got to set that down, and that's got to be in stone. You go to sleep. That's it. And when they go to sleep, you turn the Wi-Fi off.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's what we had to do with that when our kids were teenagers. It was the only solution. Yeah.
Yeah.
And having that routine every day of a set bedtime, like you said.
Very important. And then the last S in FESS is stress. You've got to assess schedules. Like who's putting the schedule together? Again, so many children go to school, and then straight from school, they're going to sports. They don't get home until like 8 o'clock at night. 3-4 days out of the week, that's way too much. That's way too much outgo. They don't have time for their homework. Now they're staying up late. You as a parent have got to figure out what sport makes sense, what sport makes sense for you. So many parents are so stressed out because they're running around like chickens with their heads cut off. Who the heck can cook dinner? Who can think? And yeah, you're going to do drive-through, duh. And how's that working? It doesn't. You end up with sick kids. That costs you money. You're out of work. Yada, yada. You don't feel good. You're gaining weight. You're ornery. Who's that you live with? I don't know, your spouse, whoever the heck they are. You don't care because you're exhausted.
Yeah, so when you add into that, you know, kids who are having extra issues like ADD, ADHD, and behavioral issues, tantrums, or they're having health issues where they're sick all the time. It's always some ear infection or another, or some kind of stomach upset. The stress is just, well, it's almost insurmountable, I think.
It's what I call high maintenance living. I hate high maintenance living. I'm trying to teach parents it's way more low maintenance to set up some of these parameters. And now you just have normal kids. That's enough. Normal kids are enough. You know, they're
that's not so true. Normal kids are enough.
Oh yeah, that's enough. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to take some stress off your life. And bottom line, if there are behavior issues, if you're dealing with a child, with children that have behavioral issues, all that means is that they are genetically weak. Their neurological system is their Achilles heel. We all have one system in our bodies, if not 2 or 3, that are our weak spots, our Achilles heel, so to speak. And so if you've got a child with a behavioral issue, it just simply means that his neurological system is the weak spot, and the toxins from a gut that's not working well are going right up to his brain and creating the behavioral issues. Think hives on the brain, okay? So I talk about that a lot in my course on behavior and nutrition, and the whole reason I did it is to teach parents that you've got to first understand what the toxins are that are going into your child. Second, you've got to understand how to get them out and how to feed them well so that the body continually pulls toxins and keeps you healthy, and figure out a lifestyle and that includes, you know, figuring out the emotional lifestyle of your family. And I'm working with a wonderful family therapist in this program, and so we go back and forth, and she's just excellent around bringing up certain points around the emotional life of a family that can absolutely affect behavior as well.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out that this program is a drug-free approach, because I know firsthand what it feels like for the school to tell you that your child is disrupting all the other children and they need to go on drugs now. So talk a little bit about the drug-free approach that you take.
That's just been my passion. I just cannot, it's so hard for me to believe, yes, every once in a while, perhaps you've got to do it. But golly, 90% of the time, if you really pay attention to the points that we bring up in this course and many of the points that I've just brought up, the behavior turns around. I've seen kids that were on their way to a detention home. There was no way they were going to make it past teenagehood, without being put away, and turn into the nicest, the nicest little boys. So, and kids that were going to be institutionalized just because they just couldn't function, and literally food alone brought it around. I've seen the autism spectrum reverse, and that's usually under the age of 5, but it's improved markedly even between the ages of 5 and 10. So food can be a profound healer. And my heart just goes out to parents who are struggling with their children with behavioral problems. You always end up, blaming yourself. And this is not about blame. If you don't know what you don't know, how are you supposed to know it? So I want you all to, get some tools so that you can handle this. And that's just the name of the game. If you really learn this stuff and start implementing it, not only will your child feel better, but your whole family will feel better. And that's what I love too. I get that feedback all the time. It's like, dang, man, the family's happier, the kids aren't getting sick, and, we're all just doing our thing, and it's much nicer.
Yeah, everybody gets their life back. Absolutely.
Exactly.
So how can they find out more about the course?
If you just go to my website, which is Fast Food Healing, I teach you how fast you can heal with food alone. So fastfoodhealing.com is my website, and it'll be right there under resources. And I always welcome comments, thoughts. On my website, you can always throw me feedback and comments.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sarah.
All right. Nice talking to you. See ya.